Hey, Michael J.
So we got the whole set. The whole Modern Horizons 2 is out there. I guess you can draft it and stuff already.
Yeah, the whole shebang.
Certainly you can talk about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot to talk about, you know. Dude, with so many cards kind of worthy of exploration, what do you think of actually starting with the new Replenish? But Resurgent Belief is the suspend sorcery with no cost, where you can pay 1 and a white to suspend it 2. You just can't, play it normal.
Without cheating, right?
Without cheating, right. And then return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you spend 2 mana and you wait 2 turns and you get a Replenish. What do you think?
That seems pretty powerful to me. Is there
this is the rare one that you could I don't know about you, but I could actually see myself just playing this.
Yeah, just not cheating it, right?
Well, if you just on turn 2 suspend this bad boy, you still got turn 3 to dump a couple super dope enchantments into your graveyard, and that's not even counting if you did anything, thought scoured yourself on turn 1 or whatever. You got a couple turns, you got turn 1 and turn 3 to make some setup action so that on turn 4 you can actually go off. And in fact, if you have any instant speed discard, you can actually use turn 4 to discard even more enchantments on your own upkeep.
What if you were just casting down or something? I mean, is cycling enchantments into the graveyard a thing you might want to do?
Totally. That could work. Absolutely. I mean, cast down's a very efficient card to begin. Not a very efficient. It's a quality card to begin with, but it's super easy to get it into your graveyard to get extra value out of your Resurgent Belief.
Yeah. So you think this is going to be a catalyst to a fair deck?
I think that's the dream. Right. Well, no, I shouldn't say fair. Do you mean by fair you actually just suspend it? Because I don't know how fair you can count it when you're just talking about replenishing.
I mean, they were printed a lot of seals in this set, right? There's a lot of just functional cards that you would play back in the day that happen to be enchantments. So you could just play. Here's a point removal, basically, that's an enchantment. You can get it into the graveyard by sacrificing it, that kind of stuff. You have cast downs, presumably other ways of getting cards into the graveyard. You said you could thought scour. There are other ways to do that. So I'm thinking this is just your version of a 3-for-1 or something. Costs you 2 mana.
I don't know.
No?
Maybe. You could, but why not just aim a little higher?
I mean, there's certainly some sort of a living end deck, right?
Well, you often don't need... Okay, if you're just going to do the value, some of the things that work with value include, Deadweight. Deadweight's kind of cute, right?
Yeah. I like that card. I've always liked that card.
I think that Crop Sigil's too slow, but it's not out of the question. It's kind of interesting that it's an enchantment that keeps milling yourself, but I think it's too slow. But, something in that space is something to think about. In general, though, you can just use a variety of different things, take, for instance, Font of Fertility. I don't know that you really want rampant growth, but if you're depending, if you have enough incentives to stack just quantity, that's a thing. And then there's also a variety of actual expensive enchantments that make things really attractive. First and foremost, there's the Omniscience is kind of the gold standard, right?
Oh, so if you get Omniscience into the graveyard, you can use this card to get it on the battlefield without paying Omniscience's enormous casting cost, and then now you have an Omniscience.
Right, so, which is pretty... I mean, that's one of the most powerful things you can do in the entire game's history, right?
That's very powerful.
Once you have Omniscience, the game is often academic, particularly if you have it on turn 4. But there's also Sandworm Convergence. That's a very powerful one. Overwhelming Splendor. Depending on how you're cut, there's Eldrazi Conscription is an interesting one, right?
So, can we aim into our graveyard, or you're just naming really expensive, powerful enchantments?
Oh yeah, there's lots of ways to aim. Like, are you saying like to search your whole deck and then just put the card into your graveyard that you want?
No, I mean like, let's say
What do
there's
you mean
like,
by aim?
there's like no shortage of ways. Like, let's just say you had some sort of a milling effect, right? You could just mill cards from the top of your library into your graveyard in the hopes that you're going to hit an expensive enchantment, but that doesn't, that
You don't need to do it that way, though.
Subject to the top of your library.
Yeah, what you can do is you can do stuff like turn 2. You can suspend. Go ahead and just suspend your just suspend your new replenish. Your ability to follow it up with a unmarked grave is like once you have unmarked grave, you can just go turn 2, suspend, and then turn 3. Unmarked grave, search your deck for any non-legendary card, aka go get Omniscience, and then put it in your graveyard, and then on the next turn you have Omniscience.
That is powerful.
Right? And it's not like you need to rely on that. You can have, looting type effects. And that lets you open up having the possibility of a toolbox, right? Like maybe you have a bunch of Omnisciences, but you only have one Shadow Worm Convergence, and you only have one Overwhelming Splendor. Right? I mean, that's pretty attractive, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, like, this is a deck that doesn't require an enormous amount of setup, right? You just basically have to draw Resurgent Belief, and then just any sort of ways to get things into the graveyard put you at an advantage. But I feel like it's pretty near a 2-card combination, and, like, I guess the cards are okay by themselves. I'm just trying to figure out like why I would do this.
Well, there's a lot of other ways you can cheat it. Well, I think once you've got Omniscience in play, you're pretty close to having won the game, right?
You're way ahead.
You don't really have to work. I don't know. Way ahead is one way to put it. I think you're way ahead. But like, I don't know, man. Like, there's other things you can do. Right, like, yeah, you can just value people. If you want to value people, I would look at Cast Down and, like, Shark Typhoon. Like, Shark Typhoon's a great one for this, right?
Shark Typhoon is nice, yeah. Because you can get them on the way down. And then it's just a significant thing when you're on the battlefield. And
there's some powerful cycling effects. I don't know if you want to, like, obviously Lay Claim isn't very good on its own, unlike Cast Down, but it's a cycling Confiscate. That's at least interesting, right?
Well,
and then
Confiscate is good.
Sagas are definitely cards that give you powerful. There's some powerful sagas that put themselves in your graveyard. But I really think that the attractive way is to look at the unfair stuff. Maybe Form of Dragon. Particularly if you have other ways to cheat them back out, because it's not like this is the only way to cheat with enchantment, so to speak, or to get kind of play a different sort of game than you normally would play.
I guess you can think about this as like an epic deck, right? Where people were playing what's the name of the epic enchantment getter? Enduring Ideal, right? So, like, it's the same structure as an Enduring Ideal deck, but rather than ramping up to, 7 for Enduring Ideal, you're just paying 2, and then you're also
surviving 2 turns.
You're not locked under Epic, right? Like, the other disadvantage of Enduring Ideal is you can't cast any more spells. You can cast plenty of spells once you have Resurgent Belief going. That's a thing.
And there's other things you can do. Let's see. So, Vessel of Nascency kind of straddles that, like in some ways it's selection, right? It unfortunately doesn't find your replenish, but it does fill your graveyard, and it's an enchantment itself. Hall of Heliod's Generosity is kind of an interesting card. Commune with the Gods, that's another one, right? Just in terms of filling your graveyard. But there's other things you can do. If you're kind of value oriented, there's a ton of ways now to play with cards that draw a card when you play an enchantment. Right? When enchantments enter the battlefield. So, like, if you want to go value, there's a lot you can do in that space.
I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to imagine what my deck is going to look like if I'm playing with Resurgent Belief. It sounds to me like there's, just from what you're saying, there's maybe 2 ways to go about it. One of them is like very, very dedicated, try to be broken enchantments, get broken enchantments back. And then one of them is kind of like, I'm just like an Azorius control deck that is leaning on enchantments, uses this as its draw engine, but like it can cast the spells.
I think it's a little bit more of a spectrum. I think it's a spectrum between these experiences, not just binary. Because, so take, for instance, Starfield of Nyx. Starfield of Nyx is a great way to have it's another, one, it's an enchantment that's awesome to reanimate. But two, it can reanimate your other enchantments, right? You can play Starfield of Nyx in a deck that's, relatively fair and give it an unfair angle. Or you can play it in a deck that's unfair and give it a fair angle. And then another one that's a possibility, Open the Vaults. It costs 6, which is a lot, but it happens right now, which has some, there's some appeal to that. I don't think that it's likely that it would come to it, but at the very least, you might consider, Archon of Falling Stars just puts the enchantment directly onto the battlefield. So if you end up with some random way to actually tutor up a creature, But more likely, I think you'd be interested in something like Open the Vaults, and especially Starfield of Nyx.
Starfield of Nyx sounds nice. That was a card that, when it came out, you're there's this.
So it saw plenty of play.
Waiting for this.
Yeah, it saw plenty of play. I think that there's some very attractive ways to do this. I think that this is – plus, at the end of the day, you know what else is an enchantment? As Foretold. You know what I mean? Like you can have some ways to, to sneak in the playing it, a little ahead of schedule.
My first impulse was find some cycling enchantments, just cycle them, and then use a cheaty Cascade card to get this back out. Is that insane? Or there's just no offense there?
I think you just got to dare to dream a little bigger.
Yeah.
You can do that, I guess. It's just that this is a really powerful format. And is the stuff you're describing better than casting all the, there's so many combos you can do and there's so many efficient spells. Is what you're describing really going to get you enough value for Modern?
I don't know. Maybe. I think Modern is weird. It's every single game, you look to your left, you look to your right at the tables in a Modern tournament, are their own little metagame, right? People are playing the Rock at one side of a table, and then they're playing Merfolk at one side of the table, and they're playing red decks, and then somebody else is playing, a Storm combo deck, and then somebody else is playing a completely different Storm combo deck, and then somebody else is playing humans. And, this is just you're all next to each other. This is, who wrote down this format? That's just every Modern tournament. And then there's Tron guys. There's Death Shadow guys. I mean, there's just so many things.
So it should be noted that Restore Balance, by the way, the original white Suspend No Cast card is actually works really well with an enchantment deck because it plays balance. And among all the things it balances, enchantments is not one of them.
That is a symmetry breaker going back all the way to the mid-90s.
And if you're playing with both Restore Balance and the Resurgence, your ability to play with some cards that let you cheat the Suspend, that's, you can do a little bit of that. And you actually could get enough equity out of it.
This is clearly a very powerful ability. To think, I think it's possible. Just going back to maybe your original idea, the original thought on this, is that this card is good enough that people will just play it and just accept they've got to replenish that takes 2 turns to resolve.
Yeah,
I think that's
at least have
possible.
That be a normal part of the range. I don't know. I think this card's going to actually show up.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it is a
graveyard. It is a graveyard card, which, it opens it up to a whole range of interaction that way, right?
Well, if you're playing just a fair version that just casts Suspends Resurgent Belief, then I think that the graveyard angle is just less bad for the Resurgent Belief player because they're just getting regular value on their enchantments on the front side a lot of the time. They're just casting them and just trading cards. They don't always have to be getting like a 20 for 1. They just get like how many times are you going to graveyard them? I mean, unless it's a persistent effect like a Leyline of the Void or a Rest in Peace. Like you get them once and they just 2 for 1 you 2 turns later.
Yep. Dude, you don't want to speed this up, do you? With like a any of those random cards that removes time counters from suspended cards?
I don't think so. Like, I feel like if this strategy is successful, I'm going to have to like not have a lot of cards that are outside the synergy. Like I need to play a lot of enchantments. So I'm probably going to be curbing my choices. Like this is just a broad example. It's not like a specific example. Like instead of having a Pad to Exile, maybe I have a Cast Down, right? Like I'm just making a lot of my decisions around like having a seal instead of having a naturalize kind of thing in order to conform to the value generation of the Resurgent Belief. And those cards aren't bad on the front end, but they're not as efficient at specific tasks as, maybe a Pad to Exile is, right? So I think like that's just my default way of thinking about this. I don't know what the mature Resurgent Belief deck is going to look like, but I feel like, okay. Any kind of, I took a time counter off kind of thing that's only going to be in like a specific combo version.
All right. So what about capitalizing on the printing of Shardless Agent, which is the 1 blue-green 2/2 Cascade?
I mean, is that card just like catapulting to one of the top cards in Modern? This was defining card in Legacy for years, right?
So you can also Shardless Agent up your suspend cards. Like if you don't play with any 1s or 2s, you can just be sure that every time you play a Cascade card, you hit your replenish. So you can actually go like turn 1 cycle, turn 2. But the problem with that is that you got to figure out a way to actually get a winner enchantment into your graveyard, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think that these are two different topics. Will Shardless Agent promote kind of these 0 casting cost suspend cards? Maybe, right? Like, is
for sure, right?
Oh no, I mean like if you put them in the same deck, it would do that if you built your deck in a certain way. I'm just saying,
but that's going to be worth it to some degree, at the very least, to go get Ancestral Visions.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not that different from just an Ardent Plea, right? Like there are other Cascade cards that.
Oh, I think it is. I think it is.
I think it's better.
No, it's because it's so much better that you can just play it in a normal deck.
Well, I mean, that's what I was saying is there's two different topics. I think there's another topic, which is like Shardless Agent is just this insane card that is now going to be available in Modern, right? Like This card is just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like you played Legacy tournaments a few years back and you would be playing against if you played, 7 rounds, you would play against a Shardless Agent deck at least once or twice over the course of the day. And the deck was like super value oriented, right? You were like Shardless Agenting into super efficient interactive cards, efficient removal, discard, or like 2 casting cost 2 for 1s. So like deck was like overwhelming you with interaction and efficiency and putting you on a clock, right? So the Shardless Agent is itself a Gray Ogre, right? It's a 2/2 for 3, has this enormously powerful Cascade ability, just basically tacked on for free. If that thing is disrupting your hand or destroying your blocker, like it's just valuably putting you on a clock. And I don't know, there's probably in Modern going to be some sort of Shardless Agent linking arms with Bloodbraid Elf. Every card in our deck is just like chaining into like 2 for 1s, and that's going to be a whole thing.
Yeah, I think that we're only just getting started there. Like that's even too broad of a thing to just be like, how are you going to use it? I think it's more like just a ubiquitous tool.
20 different ways to use it. I mean, like I think it's going to be in Cascade decks for Suspend. I think it's just going to be like, I'm going to use the word Jund. Obviously, blue is not a Jund color. I mean, just kind of like hyper individual card efficiency, 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s over and over again, that kind of a deck. The kind of deck that is all the cards are either themselves 2-for-1s, often lacing into 2-for-1s, like Bloodbraid Elf into Lingering Souls, that kind of thing. That's totally going to be a thing, and because of the existence of so many great like hand destruction cards that are available in Modern, that would allow a deck like that to compete with these broken combo decks.
Sure. Actually, on the note of really, really, really powerful cards in this set, Damn. What about Damn, dude? Black, sorcery, destroy target creature. A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated. And has overload 2 white. So they fancy, but that means that you've got yourself a sorcery speed terminate, right, for BB. But then you also have the option to play it as a Wrath of God.
Yeah, I think that is the opposite way of how I would describe it, actually. Right?
Do you think it's a Wrath of God that you can play as a terminate? I
think it's a Wrath of God that some decks can play as a terminate. So if you look at certain construction in kind of Wrath of God selection, people have willfully played cards like Day of Judgment, even in formats where they could play Wrath of God. Sometimes they'll play, what's the blue one, Supreme Verdict. They could play a mix of those things, in part to get around Meddling Mages, in part to play with cards like Gifts Unforgiven. Depends on the structure of the format. So if you look at it like that, people are already playing the worst version of Wrath of God sometimes, because a Day of Judgment is like functionally equivalent to a Wrath of God if the opponent doesn't have a regenerating creature in play, right? So you mix it up. They can't Meddling Mage you for all your sweepers now. I think that on the one hand, Damn is going to just jump into that kind of a sequence because it is now the Wrath of God that they can't, it's just another version of that. It's a little bit better than Day of Judgment just from that perspective. There's two things that are going on here even before you start talking about black mana. One of them is this card costs 2 instead of 4, so it has some play.
It can be spell snared?
Well, it has to play against Gaddock is what I was thinking.
Oh, that's actually a really good point.
Even outside of being able to cast it for black, right?
And that's a great point.
The other thing about it is it's bad against Inquisition of Kozilek, right? So,
true.
Yeah, I think that its pluses far outweigh the fact that it is Inquisitionable, because it's also duressable, Thoughtseizable. So that's one card.
Dude, I do think the other side has the merit too. Just like you're talking about, just playing this card as a Wrath of God, even without black mana. Why would surely this card's going to show up as a black terminate even without white mana, right?
Oh man. So now let's look at the other end. This card is, when you look at the full, spectrum of stuff that this card offers, this card is wildly better than Wrath of God. Right? The black terminates, that is 75% of the jazz here, man. Like, if in a black-white deck in particular, this card is going to be played on all the modes. It's really difficult to play against if this card exists, right? So there's kind of two schools of thought when you're playing against removal. One of them is, don't put out too many things, they might wrath you. The other one is, if you don't put out enough clocks, you don't put them in enough of a threat position, they can just do their thing, right? Like, you are literally damned if you do, damned if you don't against this card. If you put out multiple things, they damn all your creatures.
You did there.
What?
I see what you did there.
I mean, I am sure that Matt Cavada and Del Loggle did it before me. And if you put out one threat, they just damn it. All right, so this card in a black-white deck, Chef's Kiss. I didn't do that on purpose because I have said Chef's Kiss in the past. But, this card is a paradigm-changing card. It's good against Gaddock Teeg. It's good with gifts. It's good against Meddling Mage. It's great in decks that don't have black. It's phenomenal in decks that have both black and white. This is a card you want to own. This is a card you want to play. This is a card you don't want to play against.
What about the other black removal in the set, though, man? What about Sudden Edict? This is that one in a black Diabolic Edict, but with split second. One in a black, target player sacrifices a creature, and Sudden Edict has split second.
It's nice.
It's only nice?
Nice.
This is only nice.
I mean, like, how much premium are you going to put on Split Second?
So there's more to talk about than just how often you play this card, right? First of all, people already play the edicts all the way up to vintage. So it at least has like some application, right? Because this is just better, right? Okay. Second of all, there's important things that this does that change the game, right? Like if you're playing a deck that has Grizzlebrand, you have to activate it without passing priority. Right? You have to, when you play it, activate it without passing priority or you get no chance.
Oh, wow. That changes the
That's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, that
so I'm
meaningfully
saying, like,
does.
Even if you're not playing with Sudden Edict, it's going to show up at least some. It's not like it's busted, but it's pretty good. It's going to at least show up some, and it's useful, and it's important to understand how to play against it, I think.
First of all, this card is clearly, on the binary scale, this is a 1. There's no question about it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's so.
The non-split second version is arguably a 1, but yes.
So, I mean, that card was a classic, right? It was a contributor to many successful decks in its day. So when I look at Modern and I look at a point removal card in Modern, there's a couple different things you can do. One, how does this card against an Emrakul? This card's pretty good against an Emrakul, right?
It's quite good.
It is very good against an Emrakul.
All things considered, you could do a lot worse.
I mean, this is very good against Emrakul. But that's not the only question you ask when you're dealing with creature removal in Modern. How good is this card against a Monastery Swiftspear? It's pretty bad, right? So
I've seen worse. It's better than Dam.
It is better than Dam against a Monastery Swiftspear. I think if you're the Swiftspear player, you're happy to play against either one of them. You would rather play against Dam for sure. But, you'd really rather play against Dam. But at the end of the day, when you're selecting your creature removal in Modern, you have to ask both questions, right? Like, this card is pretty good against a Primeval Titan. I don't mind it. But sometimes it's bad against a Primeval Titan, right? Like, sometimes a Primeval Titan is buddies with, I don't know, like a Sakura Tribe scout, right? Like, oh, man.
Yeah, but not that often.
So it is definitely a 1. I think it has
against
to pick
Geist
its spots.
Draft?
It is aggressively outstanding sometimes against Strange Draft, and sometimes they've got like an Avacyn's Pilgrim in play, and you're like, ugh, I wish I had Dam.
You do got to watch out if they ever end up with a Leyline of Sanctity or something, you won't be able to target them.
Oh, but yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, so it's like, is this like aggressively medium against Boggles?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I think it's pretty good though.
It is.
They usually don't have Leyline. I think it's actually good.
I mean, it's really bad.
Besides, just Vindicate their Leyline.
So you like Vindicate in Modern? Do you think that's going to be a big player?
Hell yeah.
You
don't like Vindicate?
No, I didn't say that. I'm asking you.
I'm saying that I don't want. What better world can you imagine than the world where Vindicate is playable in Modern?
Okay.
Like, I don't want to live in the world where it's not.
To be clear, I would love to live in the world where Vindicate is not just played, but good in Modern. I would love to live in that.
I don't believe that it could be not good. I don't believe it. People play weird Stone Rains. I don't believe that Vindicate is not going to be a playable in Modern.
I mean, you know me. I was kind of chuckling when they banned Oko Thief of Crowns in Modern, but this is not that good. Like, it was fine. Like, 3 casting cost fair cards are like,
they're fair.
Like fine in Modern. Like, their decks are fast.
I don't know what you want out of Vindicate. It's a good card, man.
I'm not saying
you like Molten Rain?
No.
What?
Molten Rain is aggressively too slow against Tron, even in fast decks.
I don't know, man. I think Vindicate is a good card. It helps solve problems, rounding out your deck, whether your problems are with Tron or with creatures or lock components or whatever. You can play it in aggressive decks so that you have some removal. That if you're playing against somebody who doesn't have creatures, you can still solve any problem you want or just hit their land to slow them down. I think Vindicate.
I would love it if Vindicate were great in Modern. I would love it.
You want a card against Tron? Talk to me about Break the Ice.
This card is so spectacular to me. I love this card so much. I wish this card were playable main deck. Maybe it is. I'm guessing it's not. I think that kitschy people like me who used to play like one snow-covered mountain in their mono red deck are going to stop doing stupid stuff like that just because they don't want to be on the wrong side of a Break the Ice. So Break the Ice, BB, destroy target land that is snow or could produce a colorless. So Battlefield Forge, Wastes, I don't know, like...
Urza's Tower, maybe?
Well, yes, Urza's Tower, Urza's power plant, all kinds of...
You get a Sinkhole, which is pretty good in its own right, but you also get a one-way Armageddon for 6.
If this card were... I actually feel like the mono red snow deck, that deck, it's like not super popular in Modern, but like it'll win a Grand Prix every 3 years or something. You know that deck? They're like Screds and Dragons, and then like 30 other cards that are like, I don't know, they've got like a 3/4 for 3, or maybe a Planeswalker, and I'm scratching my head how this won a Grand Prix, but there's like 40 cards in the middle of their Screds and their like 24 snow-covered land that are like their choice of dragons occasionally win a Grand Prix. So that deck, I don't know if it's even viable anymore. Like, how can you play that? They don't have blue. Like, I'm a mid-range deck. I need to get to 3 to even like play my random mid-range card. I need to get to 4, if not 5, to play my card that you could probably kill with a point removal, but I have a card advantage engine or something, and I'm hyper-efficient Screds. But you could just pay 6 and destroy my whole side of the battlefield? Like, that's bad medicine for a mid-range deck. Like, if it's a blue-white deck, they can mana leak you or counterspell you these days. Like, a mono-red deck, that's no bueno.
Is there any chance that you're board... Like, I'm not saying you have it for Affinity, but if it's already in your sideboard, is there any chance that you end up boarding it in against Affinity?
Depends on how bad my main deck looks, right? Like, I've brought in random off-cyclers in certain matchups because I had main deck cards that were so bad in particular matchups. I mean, this at least has text, and it has if you're on the play, this has text on turn 2. That's pretty good. The problem is they could drop their whole hand by turn 2, so it might not be good enough. It's certainly plausible.
So what do you think? Is this going to get there?
Oh, for sure. I think the only question is whether this sees a lot of main deck play or not.
That's the only question?
I mean, look, this card is like pretty bad against aggro. It's pretty bad against Infect.
Wait. Okay. So what about if their deck has Cavern of Souls, Unclaimed Territory, Horizon Canopy, isn't the human deck basically like mostly cards this destroys?
Well, the human deck, I think like they also have Aether Vial. B, one Stone Rain on turn 2 may or may not slow them down depending on who went first, depending on if they have Aether Vial, depending on if they have Noble Hierarch. Like, I think those are just really big questions. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, a 2-mana Stone Rain is going to ruin a lot of people's day if their deck is designed wrong. But I don't think humans... I think humans is like... has to recognize that Break the Ice exists, but I think that humans is not scared of Break the Ice. Like,
that's fair.
Like, if any game that they draw 4 land, like, Break the Ice is basically just a non-factor.
Yep.
Especially if they went first, right? So... I think this card is way more interesting when you talk about its interaction with Tron. I mean, it's against Eldrazi decks. Woo! It's just nice against Eldrazi, especially like on turn 2. If you can take out a double land, that's like a big deal, right? You're almost setting them behind 2 if you do this to a double land. And then
I think Tron is still the pinnacle, though.
It's good there.
Crushing.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think, like, maybe it's not like a necessity that this card existed, but it's nice to have a card that's, like, meaningfully fast enough to interact with the Broken Mana and Tron. Like I was saying a minute ago, like, Molten Rain is legitimately too slow against Tron if they went first. Like, they're like, all right, I'm about to be turn 3. I'm about to get them. But they went first, so they just actually cast their Karn already. Like, I'm going to Molten Rain you next turn. A little too late, man. Like, that's a problem. Break the Ice is going to be able to stop even those games.
So what do you think about Rise and Shine? 1 and a blue sorcery. Target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature, and put 4+1/+1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way, with overload 4 blue. So it's an Ensoul artifact that can't get disenchanted or anything like that. It gets disenchanted in that they could hit the artifact, but it's not, it's not actually an enchantment, but it's kind of an Ensoul artifact that only makes it a 4/4. But for 6, you wake everybody up and you're hitting them with Titania's Song.
I like it. I mean, I think you just play it in the same way that you play an Ensoul artifact, right? Like, a lot of those decks were already just playing that dude that does the same thing.
Yeah.
I think this is just fine. It's good. I think, like, you're probably not gonna. It's like you had Shock in your deck that also has Lightning Bolt, which people have done in the past, because they just wanted the redundancy, and it's just like, a little bit worse than its Ensoul artifact. It has this. Actually, it's very clearly Burst Lightning, which a card people actually play in Modern right now. So this is the Burst Lightning to their Lightning Bolt. I don't think that people are going to get a lot of the Overload version, but if they do, yeah, that's fine.
Actually, on the note of Burst Lightning, what do you think of Kaleidoscorch? 1 and a red sorcery. Converge. Kaleidoscorch deals X damage to any target where X is the number of colors and mana spent to cast the spell, so hopefully 2. But then it has flashback of 4 and a red. So hopefully you flash it back with WooBird and deal 5. But, it can be whatever.
This card seems like not that good to me.
It's not that good?
No, I mean, here are my thoughts. Like, the front side is like
1 mana worse than Firebolt.
Sorcery speed, right?
Like Firebolt.
Yeah, but nobody Firebolts. They all Lava Dart. Right?
You would Firebolt, though.
I have not Firebolted. I've had the opportunity to Firebolt for 2 years now. I Lava Dart. I don't Firebolt.
Okay, what if Firebolt did 5 when you flash it back?
Then I would obviously Firebolt, but the problem is a deck that can actually do 5 with Kaleidoscorch has got to have something better to do than flashback Kaleidoscorch.
Well, you're already playing 4 Tribal Flames, I assume, right?
People don't even Tribal Flames these days.
Yeah, I know. It's because they didn't have Kaleidoscorch.
Kaleidoscorch and Tribal Flames, they go that way. I guess, look, 5-color Zoo was a great deck at one point in the past and extended. Maybe. I mean, but like, I guess if you're fail state, because like those decks oftentimes they actually got to 5 land, were not happy. This is a pretty good thing to do when you have 5 land.
Oh yeah. It's convenient increments, right? Like if this deals 5 and your Tribal Flames deals 5, yeah, those are some nice chunks, good. Right?
But like the front side is so bad, Patrick. Like I think that the thing that I'm really kind of racking my brain on is like how often you deal 1 on the front side.
I don't think that's going to be too big of an issue.
It's definitely in the range.
Okay, well, you know what else is in the range? Dealing 3 on the front side because of your opponent's Thalia.
Counterpoint. That 3 went to Thalia, not the opponent's face.
No, that might be your road to victory, man.
It might. We're probably not winning that game if it is, but I very much appreciate the thought.
Actually, going back to the enchantment note for a second, what do you think of Sanctum Weaver? The 1 and a green, 0/2, tap for X mana of any one color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. Like, in light of the stuff we've seen, like, for instance, there's both, obviously there's all the reanimation stuff we talked about, but there's also stuff like Enchantress's Presence, Sterling Grove, and, there's Mirari's Wake if you're looking for that kind of a thing. But there's also the new Scythus Harvest's Hand. Green-white for a 1/2 legendary enchantment creature nymph. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, gain a life and draw a card.
So are you thinking... Well, first of all, let's just break down Sanctum Weaver. Sanctum Weaver's fail state is 1G for an O2 that taps for 1, right? Because it itself is an enchantment, so it doesn't get worse than that.
Yeah, in the normal case, right?
Yeah, so if you look at it that way, that is not a good card, but it's also not a bad enough card that you throw it out, given the fact that it has an enormous level of upside. This is no upper limit, right? Like, the upper limit is how many enchantments you have. So you could have a lot of small enchantments even, and Sanctum Weaver is going to produce a lot of mana.
Yeah, plus, it's in the range to be doing stuff like, can't you freed from the real? Like, if you freed from the real, that's the 2 and a blue enchant creature. Basically, you can pay blue to tap the enchanted creature, or you can pay blue to untap it. So if you put freed from the real on this bad boy,
that's just an infinite mana loop,
right? As long as this, because that's already 2 enchantments. So you tap for 2 mana, and you spend 1 mana to untap it, and you just do that as much as you want. And if you play this guy on turn 2, if you just drop freed from the real on turn 3, you win. You have infinite mana. You don't necessarily win. That's outrageously good combo, right?
Yeah, I'm in. That sounds fantastic. That's just.
And it's not like there aren't. There's other freed from the real combos, and it's not like this card's just a fail on its own. It's the end of the day. It's a mana donk.
Whatever. I could just cast my Jace the Mind Sculptor on turn 3. That. That's for sure is going in this deck.
Yeah, this card sounds great.
Yeah, very, very convinced very quickly on that card.
So, dude, maybe it's too old school, but is it time for Braid's Cabal Minion? 2 black, legendary human minion, 2/2 at the beginning of each player's upkeep. That player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land.
No, it is not time for that card.
It's too slow.
I first of all, I had so much Braids. We played Braids in block. We sideboarded Braids in black control. This is a forecasting cost 2/2. It's 2021 in modern. Come on.
Okay, then let's.
It's nice. It's actually not, it's symmetrical.
Let's see how unbiased you are then. How about Yavimaya Elder?
I think that's also too slow. But I'm not a Jund guy. If you're a Jund guy, maybe you're in love with this. They were playing that card in Legacy though, weren't they? Sacrificing Cabal therapies and stuff with it. All right, I guess we can go to some sort of Hyper Sol Malka universe and play Braid's Cabal Minion with Yavimaya Elder. We'll have so many extra permanents. We just hope our opponent isn't playing either a fast deck or a combo deck or a control deck that might be able to interact with a forecasting cost 2/2. But if they're none of those 3 things, Braid's Cabal Minion is probably going to be great for us.
Dude, here's a weird one. Scour the Desert. 3 white sorcery. Exile target creature card from your graveyard. Create X/1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying, where X is the exiled card's toughness.
That is a weird one. I agree.
What do you think, man?
I don't know why I would ever want to do this.
What? To make an insurmountable board.
Yeah, so you're saying I have a 15 in my graveyard, right? Now, I've gotten a 15 in my graveyard.
I don't know where you get a 15. I guess you could have a 15. I don't know. You have to work pretty hard to have an actual 15.
Yeah, I'm just saying a number of...
You have something big. Let's say you have
a 10.
At least, yeah, or 14.
Okay.
Or 12.
A 6. I have a 6 in my graveyard.
Nah, that's not that good.
Yeah, it's not.
No, I'm saying, but like, what if you have like a 12?
Okay, I have a 12 in my graveyard. It got there somehow, okay?
Right.
Like, if I certainly didn't have the 12 in play, and then they killed it, right?
Why not? It's Galta.
Might have gotten there. Okay, so I have a 12 in my graveyard. I'm now tapping 5 mana to target the 12 in my graveyard, and in return, I get 12 1/1 creatures.
With flying?
That's not insurmountable to me, man. I mean, like, it's expensive. Like, you know, people are damning. People are, you know. I think that's just not insurmountable at all.
Okay, how about this?
I don't even think it's that powerful for
5. What about Death Shadow?
So I have a 13 in my graveyard. Well, is it count as 13 in my graveyard, or like would they count it based on its?
Yeah, because the difference is that so Tarmogoyf would be small because it's got the asterisks in the power toughness box. Death Shadow actually has 13/13 in the power toughness box. Its ability is only active when it's on the battlefield. So you can play with Death Shadow, and you'll have yourself a 13/13.
So, but I mean, I just have a hard time believing I would ever want to tap 5 to transform that 13/13 in the graveyard into 13 1/1 creatures. Like, that's just not. It's not a thing. That's not a thing I can imagine ever wanting to do. That's
all right.
Like, a lot of things, I'm like, oh, okay. I might not be a Braids Cabal minion guy myself, but I can see somebody like wanting to play Yavimaya Elder and Braids Cabal minion in the same deck and like just incrementally eke out a slight amount of advantage over the course of 20 turns. I've been that person in the past. This is a commitment, right? I have to spend 5 mana. I use deck building costs, and I had to get the expensive creature in my graveyard somehow. A lot of things can go wrong.
It's a little tough. What about I don't know. You mentioned the seals earlier. What about the seals? Like, what about Seal of Removal? I know you got a soft spot for it, but does it have what it takes nowadays?
It could, certainly. It's probably only ever going to see play in a mono blue deck or an enchantment based deck.
Sure.
Right? So one of those two. Actually, in certain enchantment based decks, you might just want to cast it like on turn 1 to slow them down while you set up your deck. That'd be pretty cool, actually. And especially bouncing something and then getting the seal into the graveyard might not necessarily be a bad thing if you were going to replenish it anyway. So I think that it has that. I mean, it could be a disincentive in a Merfolk deck. Okay, so let's say you're playing Merfolk and you're playing Merfolk against like a Reanimator deck or some sort of like big Primeval Titan deck. I could totally imagine just wanting to spend turn 1, you play a seal removal instead of playing like a horribly bad Merfolk on turn 1, right? Like all the Merfolk decks, good Merfolk start on turn 2, right? So you're like, all right, I have some bad Merfolk, but instead of casting one of them, I'm just going to cast a seal removal so that even if they go off with their Primeval Titan, I can slow them down. I think that's pretty good.
All right. What about Goblin Bombardment, man?
I think this is going to be a really important card. It is 2 things important about it. One, it is a sack outlet that has no mana cost requirement. So
love it.
That's
Couldn't agree more.
Big deal. Whatever you do with it past that point, that's the thing that's important. It happens to transform creatures into damage at an acceptable rate. If you build your deck in a certain way, it might just be a kill. And it's probably got other value, right? Like things that, if you've got like some sort of like persist type stuff or flashbacky type stuff, it might just be good in those decks. It's defense against people who want to do some sort of act of treason effects, if that's a thing, I think it's going to be a player. I don't think it's going to be like widely
What's good
played.
with act of treason too, man?
Oh, it's fantastic with act of treason. You're right.
But you can play it in like some sort of a black-red deck that has like Village Rites, Goblin Bombardment, maybe Carrion Feeder, maybe Crypt Breaker, or Bloodghast, or Gravecrawler, or there's a lot of things you could do. I mean, you can play Lingering Souls, because like you can end up in this spot where you can just like stack enough damage, particularly if you have stuff like Blood Artist types.
Oh,
you know?
That's awesome with Blood Artist types. Really awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
That damage can really add up.
So speaking of red enchantments,
and importantly, I do want to note it only costs 2, making it a really attractive card for a Lurrus of the Dream Den deck.
oh, that is nice. I like the fairish angle on that. Here's a card that's a red enchantment. This card seems phenomenal to me, but I don't know if it's. Maybe I'm wrong. It just seems so powerful. I think this is going to like change the complexion of formats where it's legal. Like, might even impact Legacy. I could totally imagine myself playing this card. So, tell me what your take is. Flame Blitz. It's R for an enchantment. I was just like, is it an instant? No, it's an enchantment. It sticks around. It has cycling 2 also, so its fail state is not bad. And its text
That's pretty medium in Modern.
Yeah, but then you look at its text. At the beginning of your end step, Flame Blitz does 5 damage to each Planeswalker. Like, this is a very, very high translation of mana to damage. Like, I don't know. I played a lot of Fry when I was playing Modern, like a year plus ago. I mean, to be fair, Fry is good both against cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor, which obviously you could target with Fry, but it's more importantly good against cards like Baneslayer Angel, which people were playing also in Modern at the time. So this doesn't have the ability to deal with a Baneslayer Angel, but like just having your enchantment sit there and just demolish people's Planeswalkers every turn.
Well, it doesn't keep demolishing it. It's much more the implicit threat, right?
Well, I mean, if they never cast it, then
or explicit threat, I should say.
Yeah, but like, yeah, the only reason they don't keep demolishing it is because dealing 5 is an insane amount of damage to deal for no ongoing mana. I think this card's really strong.
Do you think it's going to see a lot of play?
I think that it's one of those weird black hole situations where if it doesn't see a lot of play, it's because it extincted the Planeswalkers, so nobody plays the Planeswalker, so there's no reason to play the Flame Blitz. I think it's one of those, right?
Yeah,
or it sees a lot of play
every once in a while, because if you've got a particularly, a lot of people are going to have incentive to press their luck at times, and if you ever just want the perfect answer, bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, I think it's very much in that zone. But I don't know. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think it's a little overrated, but it's fine. I think it's got a great dream, but I just think that the way it's really going to play out, you can do things against it. Like you just play your Teferi and you put it third from the top or whatever, second from the top. Like a lot of Planeswalkers have ways to kill it, like a lot. So like if you're playing a deck with a lot of Planeswalkers, I don't know how worried you even are. I mean, it's annoying. It could be fine. I'm a little cooler on it than most. I think it's also just obviously so wildly narrow, and it doesn't gain you it doesn't keep progressing, giving you an advantage. It's more of a suppression thing that doesn't stop your opponent from setting up.
Yeah, it's like a weird
they can
duress.
Still play their Planeswalkers and use them, and once in a while they might even like survive a turn.
Yeah, all those things are true. I mean, would you have ever been a big fan of Fry in Modern? I thought Fry was just a really good answer for the kind of decks I was playing at the time.
This card is counterable, sorcery speed, symmetrical, doesn't hit creatures.
Yeah, it doesn't in particular hit the one creature you really want to hit, which is a 5 toughness lifelink creature.
This is a really great design. I just don't think it's that good.
All right. Let's round it out with the last of the elemental incarnation cycles. We didn't talk about those in previous weeks. Fury, the red one. 3 red, red for a 3/3 creature.
Yeah, but it has double strike.
Ah.
So already, that's like a 6/3, I guess. But when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. So it's a pyrokinesis, sorcery speed, but it hits planeswalkers as well as creatures. Now, pyrokinesis didn't leave you with a 3/3 double strike, and it actually costs 6 to hardcast. But like pyrokinesis, you can exile a red card from your hand to play this for 0. And with synergies, potentially, from your creature going in or out,
Yeah. So do you like this one?
Definitely.
I think this one's
this
pretty
card
exciting.
seems. I think this card's very exciting. This card's got a wide range of applications. I think that if you're playing, so picture you're playing some sort of an unfair deck that doesn't end up with a lot of mana, but it ends up with a lot of cards. Having the ability to just for 0 mana deal 4 damage divided among creatures and planeswalkers, that's so good, right? Like you can kill some planeswalkers straight up, but you can also just like kill 2 humans in one shot.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right, and then there's a lot of combos with it, right? Like you get back this card with Colligan's Command.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And then like it gives you a creature that dies. It's a thing that can be reanimated, but it's also just a legit threat. You just play this as like a Ravenous Chupacabra, but it hits for 6.
That's really strong. I mean, like, obviously, a 3 toughness creature for 5 is not the most durable in Modern, but like...
Yeah, but you're drawing a 0 mana deal for split up.
Yeah, if you ever actually got through with it, like, they would be feeling that in the morning.
Like, this is a card that you would consider in Jund, right? Like, assuming you have enough red cards to, like, get you in the door.
When I saw this card originally, I was thinking about the free spell deck you played back in Chicago 2000, where you had, like, 12 just cards that just cost nothing. So, like, obviously you don't necessarily have, like, a red Necropotence, but there are plenty of decks that have a surplus of cards, right? Like, you don't have to always be discarding. You have so many cards every turn. If you just have, like, 1 or 2 extra cards over your opponent, there's a lot of ways to get there, right? You could just commands get there, right? Like Wrenn and 6 can help you get there. If you've got that kind of stuff and you're just like playing your lands out, the fact that you can do Fury while deploying other things with your mana, which could include other removal, that seems pretty cool. I love the fact that you can hit a medium to large size creature or split it up amongst like 4 tokens. Like this just takes out like a whole Lingering Souls, like all the Lingering Souls it takes out. So that's pretty cool. You might need to do that sometimes.
What about using Fury and obviously Grief in your Living End deck? Like, these are creatures that go to your graveyard for 0 mana.
Yeah.
And then, like, they're good to reanimate. And even Endurance is interesting. I don't think it really comes to that, but the fact that you get to, like, you could, like, use Endurance to get rid of your opponent's graveyard, setting up your Living End.
That's strong. Yeah.
And it's a flash card, so it's like a hate card.
I like Endurance because it reminds me of Simian Grunts. Remember, I was really a big fan of Simian Grunts when that first came out. Weirdly, no one ever played that card in Constructed except for me. I
played against it. Oh, yeah, I played against it in a Pro Tour.
But by who? Adrian Sullivan?
I'm not naming any names.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that my opponent, plays Simian Grunts. I set aside 8 cards.
Did they happen to cast like a Hunted Wumpus that game? I cast a Hunted Wumpus against Bram Snapvangers, and he put a Spirit of the Night in play. And I was just like, Adrian Sullivan! I did make day 2, though. So think about like the 6 people I beat on day 1, how they must have felt.
So, dude, I think it's undeniable. This set has a lot of juice.
Yeah. understatement.
We're looking at a whole new modern. All right, see you next week, dude.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge just a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis days.